This is multi-generational warfare we've been involved with, and I can tell you that it's a hell of a lot harder being on this side of the ocean than that side of the ocean. I know what I'm doing over there.
I will trust a veteran before I just trust somebody look like me. I can tell you right now. The trust is there. It's hardwired.
We operate at the speed of trust. Our greatest recruiting tool is another veteran that refers a buddy to us.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Addy Hour podcast. As always, I appreciate the ways that you all are tapping in and listening to these conversations. I do want to say that one of the things that I really feel honored and blessed about hosting this podcast is the fact that we're able to have so many different types of discussions and conversations about topics that are really important and relevant for our society today. And so today is going to be no different in that realm as we're talking about veterans' mental health and wellness. And particularly thinking about how we as a society are intentional about providing resources for our veterans, and also thinking about how we continue to combat the stigma. Again, this is a conversation I think is really important for every single one of us as a society member, whether you're a veteran yourself, whether you have a family member, loved one, or friend who is a veteran, or even if you don't, I can guarantee you that you interact with veterans in your daily cadence, in your day-to-day walk of life. So I think this is really important for all of us to really be aware of and to think deeply about. And today I'm honored to be able to host two leaders who are really going to help us navigate through that discussion and conversation. And again, this is one where I think you're going to get a lot of concrete information, a lot of inspirational stories, and a lot of encouragement about just the importance of the work. So the first guest that I'm going to introduce is Ellsworth Tony Williams. Mr. Williams is a retired Army combat veteran who has 24 years of distinguished service. And in that service, he experienced firsthand the challenges and the triumphs of military life. From the front lines of his military service, he actually shifted and pivoted into the field of clinical mental health counseling after retiring. And that is what fuels him day to day. He has a relentless commitment to serve. And this is a commitment he also inherited from his father, a fellow Army veteran. Just to give you all a little bit of context, he earned his master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from Troy University, and that knowledge equipped him to be able to have these skills to tangibly make a difference in the lives of veterans and their families. Very impressively, again, he's a remarkable individual, but he's built his organization from the ground up. He founded Veterans Counseling Veterans, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to bridging the gap between veterans and mental health support. In that, they focus on many different areas, including veteran suicide prevention, intervention, awareness, postvention, and also providing essential support in cases of military sexual trauma. So things that are really important, things which are challenging to work through, but things which they are equipping individuals with as well. And I do want to also mention the motto of Veterans Counseling Veterans, which is "We are all family and we take care of our own." So it's my honor and privilege to welcome Mr. Tony Williams to the Addy Hour podcast.
Thank you.
The second guest I'd like to introduce is Jack Hammond. Jack is someone who I got connected to a few years ago when we were both participating at a conference in the New Jersey Reentry Society annual conference, something that was a really important conference for the community, and I was really taken aback by his story and all the work that he's doing, so I knew we had to continue this conversation in some shape or form. So to introduce you all, Jack Hammond is a retired U.S. Army Brigadier General with multiple combat commands, who also currently serves as Chief Executive Officer for the Home Based National Center of Excellence for Mental Health and Brain Injuries. He's a decorated combat leader and who also works in the private sector and has served on many different advisory groups for presidents, governors, and businesses. So again, we'll get into some of the work as well, but just to give you a taste, some of the work that he's been able to contribute to has been in areas like defense, construction, biotechnology, marketing, and more. As a retired brigadier, and when he was still serving, he led U.S. and NATO forces in combat and counterterrorism operations in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So someone who is definitely in the craft and the business of leading others for very important missions as well. And he's been with Home Base since 2012. I should also mention Home Base is a unique partnership between the Boston Red Sox organization and Massachusetts General Hospital. And over the past decade, General Hammond and his team have established the nation's first private sector center of excellence for the invisible wounds. They've also developed innovative solutions for mental health and brain injuries, and they're doing this with unique partnerships, which we're likely also going to hear more about as well. General Hammond, thank you as well for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on the ADR podcast.
Thanks for having me today.
Of course. So as my listeners know, I always like to just do a general check-in just to see how you all are doing. Tony, how are you doing at this point in time as we are still in the early-ish phases of 2026 and somewhat still navigating through these snowstorms that seem to be nonstop across this eastern seaboard?
I thought about that because I've noticed in a lot of your shows you always ask about the check-in, and I tell you right now, currently I'm going it's ready, almost overwhelming. I'm going through 4 major domains I'm talking about now. So I got Veterans Council veteran going at the same time. My mother-in-law has been diagnosed with dementia as well as having cancer. Then my wife and and making sure my wife and I have the understanding of what's going on with us as well. So when you got all those things intersecting, it can kind of almost get confusing. And so I can end in with my birthday's next week. So all those things are kind of at this point in time. I'm still trying to compartmentalize everything so it makes sense.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that level of honesty. Sorry to hear about all the things that family is going through. I will, though, say happy birthday 1 week in advance. And I will also say, even a layer that makes me even more appreciative of you taking the time out of your schedule to join us. I know how busy you are with veterans, counseling veterans in and of itself, let alone all the other things that you're navigating as well. So I think that speaks volumes to who you are as an individual and your commitment to this work as well. So I appreciate you sharing that. General Hammond, how are you at this point in time?
Doing pretty good, but I think Tony highlighted the fact that he's dealing with what a lot of people are dealing with. You've got personal stuff, you've got professional stuff, and then we look at crazy weather. We can throw that in for that. When Floridas have the iguanas dropping out of the trees like acorns, you're looking for the 7 signs of the apocalypse starting to come. But I think one of the most challenging aspects of the time right now is just such the division we face in the country. I like Tony's expression that we're all family and we take care of our own. And, as a country, we're all family and we try and take care of our own. But sometimes we have a dysfunctional family, like many times, and it causes problems when you see these type of challenges we face as a country. Where things we believe in don't seem to be materializing, things we accept in the military as fact are suddenly called into question, and quite frankly, how we treat people it isn't exactly where it needs to be. And so I think all those challenges add to the day-to-day difficulties that people face. We all like to seek stability because when things are stable, we can prosper. When we're in the fight or flight mode, we're dealing with things as they keep popping up at us. It makes life a bit harder. It doesn't need to be that hard. A lot of these things are self-inflicted, and it's troubling to see them happen because we have a lot of people facing some difficult challenges that really extended from the COVID pandemic. And just as we started to get our head out of the water, it seemed like the chaos continued and the challenges grew and the division grew. And so, it's difficult to watch that happen. But it's not limited to our country. And you look globally, a lot of countries are facing the same challenges. And if we could focus all that energy on positive things and helping people, I think we'd be a lot better off.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I appreciate the context in which you've put all that as well. Even as you're talking, one thing we may loop back to, I'm also thinking about how that impacts the work that you all are doing. And General Hammond, you've hinted at that as well. Mr. Williams, you've hinted that as well. But just in terms of, one, your own well-being, but then also those you're serving, and how trying to navigate through the pandemic, getting to a better place, and having to deal with so much more that comes up as well. So again, I think this is it's important to be able to have these conversations. And again, what I appreciate about you all is how honest you've already been. I mean, we've just opened this conversation. You're already being honest about all the layers that are important in this work, but that also affects the work that you do as well. Maybe even following up on that a little bit, just to give the listeners a sense for how you all stepped into this advocacy work, because they've both heard about your life in the military and the important work you've done there, but why take this next step to continue in some of that way as well? Mr. Williams, anything you want to share on your journey into this work?
I think what's the most important thing that I've noticed, not just from my work, but like my whole life, it's always 64 next week, is that this Veterans Council veteran is my God assignment. And I say that unapologetically. It really is my God assignment. And the two things that I have that are more important to anchor the God assignment is being obedient and faithful. And
Mm.
those things will challenge you as you get. But if you hang in those, you'll see it play itself out. So that for me, that's one of the things I look even at what's going on with the world and stuff. I make sure that I'm focused on my assignment, which is Veterans Council Veteran. That's how I step into it. And it's interesting at the time you look at it in rearview mirror and you see it. It makes more sense. You don't see it when you're going through it. But I really look at from how I started with this. My dad being in the military and me grew up as a military child. That changed my framework of work. Me being a minority is a difference because you don't really see the minority if you grow up in the military. You just don't.
Mm.
Right? I mean, literally, your best friend is all kind of races and stuff.
Mhm.
So that's something, and that because of that difference, you find yourself more isolated with some people because you have not lived that experience. So that played a big part of me growing up in the military, seeing all kinds of different kinds of people, how they act and values, and that really shaped it. But clearly, the Veterans Council and veteran piece is a God assignment, and I want to say something as I look at the God assignment is there's a difference between an assignment and a calling. And I believe this is more of an assignment because it's very specific. Whenever I try to go outside the left or right rails, I get slapped back by a failure, right? So my specific assignment are the veterans and their families, not the whole world. So that is my assignment. Is that next? That's where I see that's how what I'm doing now plays a role in what I'm doing today, and definitely what I do tomorrow.
Mm. Yeah, very well said, and appreciate that level of candor too, and how you've navigated into this, and just the confirmations you have along the way. Is it something that you felt was emerging while you were still in the Army, or is it something that you started to get a sense of afterwards, or was it a little bit of both?
That's a good question because I joined the military and I was actually a high school dropout.
Hmm.
I was very tactical, and of course, John Howell will bounce back and forth to these these tactical levels, but it was very tactical at first, and I just didn't understand the big picture. And I remember here I dropped out of high school. I was upset 'cause my dad was retiring, and he was retiring to a place I just was not comfortable. And at the time he's retiring, it was Wilmington, Delaware, and at that time they were all into the busing. So and I was a really good wrestler. I was a champion wrestler from New Jersey. Matter of fact, Pemberton High School, and I could not take the change because I was bused to an area that was busing, and it was like 95% African Americans. And then I sit and I asked the teacher, I said, look, I need these kind of classes, and they didn't have them. Right? They said, yeah, we don't have those classes, so all you gotta do is show up every day and you're good. And then what happened, my sister, who was older than me, she already graduated, and she was being recruited by the military. And I said to her, I said, can I go with you when you go down to the recruiting station? She said, sure. That was a Monday. Friday, I was on a bus going on to Lindenwood, Missouri.
Wow.
So if you look at that, and then I know the small angle, I don't want to be too transactional, but when I joined the military and I was in the basic training, they mistook my academic record for another guy named Alfred Williams. And so I was platoon leader the first day. So they realized a mistake that I was a high school dropout. And when we was in formation, they said, platoon leader Williams, I said, yes, sir, yes, sir. He says, we found out you're a high school dropout. I don't know how the military got so bad that they got a high school dropout, but you have exactly 2 minutes to go back into your 2-man room, take all your stuff out, put it in the open bay, and be back here in that time. Go! That time, it did not seem like I got assignment. Okay, I'm telling you. At that time, I felt like I made the biggest mistake in my life of joining the military. So and I only give you that anecdotally because at the time, I did not see it as a God assignment. It was very tactical. I wanted to get away from the environment I was not comfortable with, and that's how I entered the military. But because of the military is how I kind of progressed from where I'm at today. I go for a bachelor's to a master's, and it's because of the military. And when I look back at it now, I see it, the God assignment then, but back then, nah. It's like,
yeah. Well, it's helpful to see the journey, for people to hear the journey along the way.
It's amazing when you don't see it then, right? Yes.
Yeah.
So so it wasn't. It initially was not a God assignment. I was not acknowledged as a God assignment. It was just me trying to get away from the new environment my dad was introducing me to.
Mm-hmm. But you were led this way, and look at all the things that have come from it as well. So again, just appreciate
yes, sir.
you adding those pieces so people can see the actual trajectory and path, and not think, oh, this was just a straight kind of forward path, but just really know the layers that were there as well.
Yes, sir.
General Hammond, what about your journey into this work? And so starting with home base in 2012.
Well, it's interesting. I actually did some nonprofit work while I was still on active duty.
Mm.
And I started out, my wife and I created a nonprofit research foundation for a very rare genetic disease that one of my children was affected by. And so that was an initial foray into that space. And then, as years went by, I also got involved with another organization called Homes for Our Troops, which builds adaptive homes for usually double and triple amputees. And I was kind of an ambassador for them for a few years and really enjoyed the work. As someone who kind of went through my own challenges after back-to-back deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, I eventually got some help, and I needed it. And did exceptionally well afterwards. And I understood the fact that it was an injury, it wasn't an illness. And, they shared and confided the fact that if I had a fractured ankle, I wouldn't try to walk on it and fix it myself. I'd get some help. And that's all I needed was, it was beyond my capability to deal with. I needed some assistance. And when I had the right tools, I was able to thrive. And so as I started wrapping up my career, my last assignment, I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan from 2000, part of 10, and then 11 to 12. We started seeing the impact of these unseen wounds. We started seeing marriages breaking up and families I knew that were solid, but the multiple deployments had really torn the families apart, and the impact on the veterans and the families just made it a bridge too far for them to stay together. We also started seeing the impact of traumatic brain injuries. Back in 2002 and 3, when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, if you got blown up and you walked away from it, you high-fived, you didn't question it, you just moved on, went on to your next mission. If somebody said they weren't feeling it and they were talking about PTSD, nobody really wanted to hear it. They said, you better reconcile that and get yourself together because we're rucking up and we're moving out tomorrow. And we didn't understand either traumatic brain injury or PTSD. I was fortunate after those deployments to get the care I needed, and so I had a different perspective on those. And I started watching folks a little more carefully, and you could see the fabric of these military families was threadbare and starting to tear in a lot of places. And you could see the same thing with a lot of the warriors who I knew as young soldiers back in 2001, 2, and 3. And by 10 and 11, they were mid-career soldiers. And I'd seen the impact of multiple deployments on them. And when I came home from my last deployment, I had 60 days leave. I was waiting for my next assignment. And my wife asked him, pretty cool question. She said, how long do you want to keep doing this? And I started laughing because we met as lieutenants and we'd been together, for quite a while. And I said, do you want me to get out? And she laughed. And she said, that ship sailed a long time ago. She said, but what is it you have left to do that you haven't done that you want to stay for? And what is that job you want that, you really got the fire in your belly for? And after another Tanqueray and tonic and sitting over and looking at a nice reservoir, I couldn't think of a job I wanted that bad to keep compromising my family situation. I just missed my daughter's graduation from Harvard. I had a son getting ready to graduate. A lot of things in life that I had missed, over the previous decade. But I didn't have that assignment because I was getting further and further away from soldiers, which is what kept me in the Army, that I didn't have the fire. And I knew my future would have been a lot of short assignments, a lot of bouncing around, frankly, when my family could use me the most. And so anyway, I made a decision to leave, and there was a little divine intervention, I guess. Somebody reached out to me and asked me if I had been approached about a position working with the Red Sox. And I had no idea what he was talking about. They were looking for a retired admiral and general. And I thought that was kind of humorous. And, they had just come off a terrible season. I didn't know they needed a pitching coach or a batting coach and what I could bring to the table. But they shared what it had to do with this program called Home Base. And ironically, I had met with the chief operating officer 2 weeks prior.
Oh, wow.
Because I was here in Boston, and I had a lot of soldiers that were from this area that were in trouble and needed help. And so I talked to this gentleman, Mike Gallard, about the program and the work they were doing. And so I called Mike back and I said, are you guys looking for somebody that's, retired with my background? He said, absolutely. And he connected me with the search committee. And it took about 6 months, and they whittled it down from 25 of us to 3 of us, and then down to 1. And I was fortunate to be asked to take on this role. And I think based on my experience of what I went through and what I saw my family go through, and then what I saw my soldiers go through, I was pretty excited about having an opportunity to work with my favorite sports team, whose idea it was to create this whole program, and a hospital that had saved my mother's life and my son's life.
Wow.
And so with those 2 options, I couldn't see a way of not wanting to do this. And that launched what came on to be something that, I initially looked at 3 years, as I did with every assignment I had in the military. And that was 13 years ago.
Wow. Well, appreciate that perspective and just walking us through that journey. I mean, there's so many powerful lessons from that as well. And I do agree with you. It seems that there's some divine direction and intervention along the way as well. But so refreshing to hear about your path into this, and from both of you as well. And just to know that, again, that from neither of you, it didn't sound like you went into the military having this in mind. This was something that emerged over time. And also assignment or calling that you also both saw a need for as well. I mean, even as you were talking just now, General Hammond, about some of the things you were seeing in other soldiers, other individuals who also need this. So yeah, definitely appreciate just your candor in that as well. And so many layers and so many things we could follow up on as well. One thing that does come to mind, again, is something that, my own limited experience with those in the military, even present day, still thinking about this aspect of stigma. I mean, I've talked to those who are even in the mental health space in the military, talking about the ways they're trying to fight the stigma, ways things have gotten better, ways there's still resistance, and then all the work that you all are doing as veterans. And I'm thinking about this as we're talking, so the question is still coming to mind, but just curious about both of your perspectives on where that aspect of the fight, so to speak, is at this point in time, and really addressing the stigma. General Hammond, maybe I'll have you jump in and give us your perspectives there.
Sure. I had the advantage. I still have very strong contact with the active military. We have several specialized programs I'll talk about in a moment with U.S. Special Operations Command, and so we have a consistent flow of active duty service members coming in. So I'm able to see some of the impact. But I would tell you, when it comes to the military, the stigma, I think the stigma rests more with the individual than with leadership. And I shared a moment ago, back in 2002 and 3, there was a stigma as a leader myself, because I think there was a combination of seeing folks that you might have thought were malingerers trying to get out of stuff and using that as an excuse. And I think that was valid in some cases, not in others. We didn't have an understanding of traumatic brain injury and the impact on someone. Again, when you lose several people to a roadside bomb, it's difficult to well up when somebody walked away completely out of scratch on the outside. And so in the fight back then, before we fully understood it, you got your bell rung, walk it off, drink some water. But I would tell you now, the leadership at the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, particularly the land-based forces in the Army and the Marine Corps, those folks all were young officers when these wars started. They lost people. They lost a lot of people. And if in the Army in particular, you'll see on their dress uniform, there's a series of little hashtags. And for each one represents 6 months. And most of the senior leaders in the Army, you'll see, have 10 or 12 of those, which means, somewhere between, 6 and 7 years of combat. And along with that, along that journey, they have seen a number of people kill themselves. A lot of friends. We've all lost friends. There isn't anybody that served in Iraq or Afghanistan that doesn't know several people that have killed themselves, and we've seen the impact on families. And so I would tell you, any combat leader that is, gets whiff of somebody that may be suicidal, they'll move heaven and earth to get them into care because they don't want one more. And so it's a different vibe. But what I would tell you is I think the stigma is more self-induced, people feeling they're letting other folks down. And that, they don't want to talk about it because they think that they're a little weaker than the other guys, because They seem to be doing fine. Why am I not being able to do it? And as members of the military, we're taught to be self-reliant. We're taught to suck it up and keep moving.
Hmm.
And you do that until you can't. And the problem is, once they're out of the combat zones, they carry that forward. And once the fighting's over and they take the uniform off, they still don't acknowledge the fact that they've got an unmet need and they need to get some help. And they keep trying to do it themselves is what happens. And you know, they push and push and push. But, you know, we deal with Vietnam vets that come through our program that have been carrying these injuries for 50 years.
Yeah.
And the best analogy I got, and I'd love to share with you, it came from one of our psychiatrists who was talking to a friend of mine who was a retired command sergeant major with 3 wars under his belt. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. He did Desert Storm, and then he was with me in Fallujah in Iraq. And when he finally came in to get some help, she approached it with him and he said, look, I'm still highly functioning. She said, no doubt. And he said, I'm a command sergeant major. I've got 10,000 troops under my command that I just left. And she said, absolutely, Sergeant Major. You're an accomplished guy. You've done amazing things. And so she said, Sergeant Major, I bet you still do ruck marches. And he goes, oh, yeah, I did one a month ago. And she goes, how far did you go? He goes, 10 miles. And he said, that's great. And he was 62 at the time.
Oh.
He's an older guy. And so she said, how'd you feel when you dropped the ruck? He goes, well, that was nothing better. I got that thing off me, you know. And she goes, I bet you could have gone another 10 miles without it. He goes, yeah, I believe I could. And so she looked at him and she says, Sergeant Major, I just want you to take your ruck off. It doesn't mean you're not a high-performing guy, but why do you want to carry around your ruck now that you don't need to carry it anymore? And I'll bet you'll feel better, just like you would if you finished a road march and you can go another 10 miles. And she had him because he was a very cynical guy. And, you know, all we're doing is asking you to take your ruck. You don't need to carry that stuff around anymore. I'm going to help you take your ruck off.
Wow. That's so powerful and so insightful on her behalf as well, just to be able to do that. And yeah, I just appreciate you sharing that story and just all the importance of being able to have those conversations. And it is encouraging to hear how that has changed among the leadership as well, for many of the reasons I think you highlighted, especially if the leadership themselves were in these positions earlier on. And Mr. Williams, to pivot to you on this same topic, because I know for veterans counseling veterans, that as General Hammond mentioned, suicide prevention is a really key area of focus for you all. So how have you navigated in providing those areas of support around suicide prevention while also trying to address stigma, if it is coming in fact, from the individuals as well?
You know, and stigma is a big part. And I tell you, one of the changes you go when you join the military, you go from an individual to a collective. And that's when the stigma is really, I mean, I know I heard General Hammond about the individual, but the military actually is like I always say when you go in the military, it's like when you're getting ready to clean wax a floor, the first thing you got to do is strip it. And what the military does is strips you of your individuality. And it puts on another coat of wax that's called collectiveness. And unfortunately, with that collectiveness comes the growing of stigma. Because the military is a very stigmatized organization starting from day one. If you don't make, like I remember I told you when I first inducted into the military, my dad's a drill sergeant too. So I grew up in the military from a drill sergeant. It's like automatic. You are like, if you can't do this, you are broke, right? If you don't do this, you are something wrong with you. You are measured from a collective point of view, not an individual point of view. And if you fail, we all call the weakest link. If you fail, the teams fail. Now the question is, how do they by them trying to build you up to the collective thoughts is where the stigma becomes so, like it's almost subconscious. You don't even know when you're doing it. So it goes to the point of how you look. When you go for a promotion, they ask you, one of the things they actually do is put a picture of your photo on it because they want to see how you look. And if you look fat, they're going to tell you, right? If you can't do the PT, they're going to tell you everything. So you may even have a great PT score, but you look fat. You don't look like a military person. That's a stigma. It's just on that can manifest itself into eating disorders. So that continues on, and the longer you're in the military, the more the stigma comes, and it's bigger because now you're responsible to promote that stigma, right? I'm now in charge of NCOs. I mean, General Hammond's been up there, but you're responsible for NCOs and training NCOs. A stigma again. If you drop out, if you show weakness, you're not a leader, right? You better not tell me, where's Sergeant Major? Oh, he's a sick call. Oh, and when I grew up, you did not go to sick call if you were a leader. You You had to go through the suck, right? Go through the suck. We call it embrace the suck. And so that what I'm saying to you is that the stigma is every day. It reminds you all the time, because you will not get promoted if you did not fit in that stigma. And that's what we have to hit. Now we hit the road now, right? Now we're saying, because for me, we are all of that stigma, not just the individual. Because if we say, one of my things I do for veterans is every year I do a special ceremony for those who lost a veteran to suicide. It's called special ceremony. So, and this year it's going to be 24th of May. And it just so happened I had one, when I first did it, I did it right on Memorial Day. And I had Gold Star mothers tell me to don't do that because it reduces their child's sacrifice. Literally, tell me, no, you can't have it on that day because we don't want that stigma for Memorial Day. So that's why I do the event now, a day or two before. So that, and I do that because I give the people who have lost someone to suicide the grace to remember and talk about and honor that, because they would not have that if they did a regular environment. Because again, my son died by an IED. My son got shot. My daughter got this. My daughter got that. And yours died by suicide. How do they even belong in that conversation, right? There's the stigma again that we have to acknowledge, that we're part of the stigma. It's not just as an individual. It's not just 3 or 4 people, but the society in itself is the stigma. And that's why I said it's not my God assignment, because something like that, it takes a spiritual change, not an individual thing. It takes a spiritual thing to actually change that stigma. And one of the things I want to bring real quick is I was military intelligence. And my second, so I was enlisted at first, and I became an officer, which makes me a Mustang, which means I do both. I call it bilingual. I can do both. But when you go into a profession that is top secret SCI, that increases the stigma even more. Okay, because if you show any kind of weakness, any kind of thing that could be compromised, that may jeopardize your clearance. So if I go to my commander and he's got to evaluate, his job is to get the mission done. And if I feel you are a threat, so if you tell me I'm not doing too good and I'm done and I'm really feeling bad, well, you're not going. You're not going because you now has just demonstrated to me you may jeopardize my mission. The stigma starts there, right? They say, okay, we don't, even though you told me that you're having a hard time with your wife or PTSD, you're going to jeopardize my mission, so I'm going to send you back to the rear until you get fixed or whatever, because you will not jeopardize. Stigma starts, right? Stigma continues on. So I really want to emphasize when it comes to the stigma that it is more than an individual, it is us as society, and it's more complex in the military because the military is us. It's a culture. We don't take it off when we go home and from 9 to 5. It's something that's draped on us all the time. So when you have a complexity like the military, it's even harder to see the stigma because they become in different layers that you probably can't even control. That's just my take when it comes to stigma. And that's why I like, when I do Veterans Council Veterans, it's us. And like General Hammond was saying before, we are taught to always, we're better at taking care of somebody in our command than ourselves. Right? We just are. So when I see that you're and you know how sir, when we sit there and somebody's not making a run, right? We all go around and loop around and we bring that person back up to the front, right? So, but we don't think about us. We don't think about us. And finally, what we call PTSD and even suicide, when you're in a war environment, you actually get a medal, right? So if I sit there and I see a grenade and it's about ready to go off and I jump on it, I may get we had to meet the thing last night. That guy, unfortunately, the guy was still alive. But a lot of those guys who sacrificed their life, if they did the same thing outside of the military environment, there's something wrong with you. But so it's a light switch. Again, the light switch that goes off and on. We want to talk about from neuroscience. So those are things that when I created Veterans Council Veterans to give them more that uniformity, comforting thing versus, in that way they will listen to us. If it's coming from me saying something's going on, then somebody from the outside. So the stigma is a very big part, and it's something that we fight all the time. And again, I just want to say it's not just the individual that's part of it, it's the whole society that's also part of that stigma.
Yeah, well, a lot of different layers that we both have brought up, and maybe to stay there for a little bit before we emphasize some of the veterans pieces. But it seems like part of it is this balance between expectations and what's needed in a military setting versus also what's needed for the individual or the individual and the collective. So maybe a question for both of you, what is the balance, or how do you find that balance between making sure the mission gets accomplished, but also making sure the individuals are still healthy and whole? I don't, this is really just a curiosity question, as I've heard both of you share these different perspectives. Mr. Williams, what are your thoughts on that? Oh, go ahead, General.
What I was going to say is building on what Tony said, and he talked about, if you're not prepared for the mission, you're going to get pulled. That is one of the leadership dilemmas, right? So if a soldier tells you that they've got some mental health challenges, in combat's different. If somebody's not functioning, they're going to put other lives at risk. You don't have any choice. You've got to, if it's bad enough that it's affecting their ability to continue with the mission, you got to send them back. And so just as if they had a hobbled up ankle and they couldn't keep up and they would cause the unit to fall back, as a commander, you just say, appreciate you wanting to stay, but you're going back till we get you back till you're ready. Peacetime, though, here's where it becomes a leadership challenge. So if I have a command position for a senior NCO or an officer, and there's 3 people being considered, and I know one of them has, 8 deployments, 10 deployments. He's got a Silver Star, 2 Purple Hearts, and I know he's actively in care. I'm probably not going to pick him for this next command, because number one, I know they're going back into combat. And I've got 2 other folks that are doing really, really well right now. Whoever gets that next command is probably going to be in line to get promoted. That's going to be that one more thing that differentiates the 3 of them when the pyramid gets tighter. But it's almost an empathetic decision that I don't want to hurt you more. You know what I mean? You may want to go, you may deserve to go, but if I send you on this one, this could be the thing that breaks up you and your family. This could be the thing that pushes you over the top. Do you know what I mean? Unless you got a clean bill of health, and that's different. But if I know you're going through some difficulty, you're also responsible for the well-being of the higher you up, the more people you're in charge of.
Yeah.
And so that's a difficult gut check decision, because you don't want to let the stigma impact the decision, but you have to make the best decision on who is going to be the best person to lead that. And at that level, it's tough to, you're starting to really fine tune and make some tough decisions, because they wouldn't have got that far if they all weren't really good. Do you know what I mean? The lower you have, the more junior you are with lieutenants or staff sergeants, there's a bunch of them. It's easy to see the differentiation between them. But then when you get up to master sergeants and majors, it's a tighter pyramid, and then you really want the best to be that next level up. And if they've been through the ringer and they're hurting, you're still a person. You don't want to hurt them anymore. And it may impact their career in the future. It may not, because they've done so many things in the past that may compensate for it. But people are always worried about that aspect. I would tell you, working with the special operations guys, that's a very tight organization and very insular. And I know when we first saw the first group of about 50 operators, we gave them an intake survey, and they were coming in for brain injury care. And part of the intake covered the number of concussive injuries they had, which in most cases is indiscernible, based on the work they do. And then we asked them about their mental health and how their PTSD levels were, and all 50 out of 50 had no PTSD whatsoever. And then on the exit briefing, after they'd gone through all their evaluations, they were told they had significantly high PTSD, every one of them. And initially they pushed back and said, no, I told you I don't have any. And the doctor's response was, there wasn't a question mark at the end of the sentence. If you believe me about all the other evaluations, trust me, I know what's going on with you, and you need to take it on. And they accepted the fact, and they asked about pathways. Interestingly enough, 4 years later, 900 operators later, we get 5 calls a week for this same program. And guys will be saying, I know the TBI, the traumatic brain injury program, is backed up. Can I come to the PTSD program first without us telling them? And it's because we've normalized PTSD within those organizations as an injury that we can fix in 2 weeks. And they know there's a solution to it. They can fix it, and they've seen a bunch of other people come back from it. And so in many ways, within our most elite forces, we've been able to destigmatize it. But the challenge we always face with them is they're deathly afraid of the fact that they'll be in care and their pager will go off. And, you know, somebody won't think they're ready. And then they'll deal with, and that's the problem, they'll deal with survivor's guilt if somebody that steps in their place gets hurt or killed. And that survivor's guilt is a real thing, as you can imagine. If somebody went in your place and got hurt, you're going to carry that around forever, regardless of what, and that's a whole area of PTSD that we do deal with. And most of the time we have to, you know, we work with the folks and they understand that it wasn't your fault. You didn't pull the trigger. You didn't ignite the suicide bomb. That it's a tough one. Again, that type of survivor's grief is a very real and powerful effect and that they're paranoid about, and then we have to deal with.
Yeah. Really important pieces that you brought up. Mr. Williams, anything you want to reflect on from General Hammond's comments?
Well, you know, I tell you, one of the things, you know, that the military generally promotes is the solution focused, right? It's about getting the job done, the mission done, and I don't have time to think about your feelings, right? Like you may be afraid. I was an S2 intel guy, so you know, you have a 7% chance of being killed if you're a special force. If you're not special forces, who knows what their kill rate is, their dying rate? But it's the scouts. Well, when you're in the military, you don't think about that, right? Just go get, you know, some of you going to die, but that's okay. That's part of the mission. The other ones keep shouldering on. The changes come when you're out of the military and you have to look at them in a different way. From my area, because I went from being solution focused to now being more emotionally aware, emotional intelligence, all that kind of stuff going on. So when I saw that soldier yesterday, that was that Chief Warrant Officer 5, that was given that Medal of Honor, as the president was talking about his heroic acts, I was like, what is going on with you? Right? Because we all know that eventually, as a human being, we're human beings. We're not robots. There's stuff that you don't see that's happening right now, just for him to get ready to get to that event. I think his wife to the left of them. What's going on with her? So now I look at the emotional point, then the mission focus back. So I look at that, and and even with the one that the National Guardman, that, you know, from the family we see who lost that young private, and to the sergeant that you know has still, you know, survived, and the mother was next to him and stuff. That's what I look at now. I don't look at, oh, you did a great job, and more than, hey, the accomplishment and the performative, but how are you? What is going on now? And when the lights go off, and you got to go home and you got to take those pathetics out, or, you know, you maybe, you know what I mean? Are the wives tired of these moments or whatever? What's going on? So that's one of the differences that I'm gonna have with General Hammond, because of course, being a brigadier general, a general officer, you know, sometimes you don't have the luxury of you know, making sure how the person feels. It's about, I gotta get the mission done. And that's one of the things I see the difference from the veteran aspect is, okay, how did that affect that person? And who's gonna be there when the lights are off and the fighting and stuff? So that's why I look at it from there. At that point, we don't talk enough about. And I would love to talk to General Hammond's kids, because I'm a military brat. So when your mother or father has PTSD, how does that affect you growing up in that household, and how does that affect your social development? So I know from a personal point of view how my dad, and that he mentioned the word malingering. Back in World War Vietnam, all those PTSD symptoms would have been identified as malingering, and you would not have gotten an award. You would not got service connected. You would have got kicked out of the military. And that's something my dad had. I'm watching my dad as he went through the ranks. How does that affect me? How do I internalize that? So I look at it from different layers of that what the General Hammond talking about, the invisible wounds.
Yeah. I mean, you both brought up so many important pieces too. And again, centering on this last point you made about these invisible wounds, especially for veterans, a question for both of you: how do you actually get the buy-in from veterans? I mean, both of you have touched on that a little bit, but that seems to be a really critical piece. So what have you found to be effective from that standpoint? Because as I'm hearing you talk, that seems like the first important piece to even get people to get help.
Yeah, so I think as veterans and members of the military, we operate at the speed of trust,
Mm,
and quite frankly, our greatest recruiting tool is another veteran that
mm,
refers a buddy to us. Um, and I would tell you, we take a mind, body, soul approach to the care, and we extend that to not only the veteran but active duty service members and
mm,
military family members, and
mm.
we have programs for all three
Oh, great.
because we know
Yeah.
all three are affected. Um, and there's a range of programs that you can engage with, because not everybody is significantly injured to the point where they need like a lockdown facility program,
Mhm.
right? Some people, when people leave the military, especially, that's a difficult time, and that's a dangerous time, because they're losing their sense of identity, they're
Yeah.
losing their sense of purpose,
Yeah.
and they have some unresolved medical and mental health issues. And so all three of those create a whirlwind of challenges. And they came into the military, and I always look at it to frame it this way. If you try and figure out the risk factors associated with it, and and in the Army specifically, and I'm sure the other branches as well, there's a lot of work done on risk mitigation,
Mm.
because we can't guarantee, as Tony mentioned, you're all coming home. You know what I mean? Because we do dangerous work.
Yeah.
But we can guarantee I will do everything in my power to mitigate the risk to the greatest extent possible and give you the resources you need to succeed. And then, then we got to get after it, right? And
Mhm.
so what I look at, in very simplistic terms, is if you look at 9 variables, and the first three are your childhood and pre-military. You had a happy, healthy childhood, a neutral one, or you had a bad one, tough one. And then your military/combat time was happy, supportive. You did cool things. You helped orphanages, very positive kind of things. Neutral, or you had a really tough experience overseas. And then the third set of variables is your transition. You came home to a happy, loving, caring family with a purpose-driven life.
Mm.
Neutral, you came home to no family, a bad situation, and a bad transition. If you had a tough childhood, a bad set of combat experiences, and a terrible transition home, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out you are high risk for
Mhm.
a really bad outcome like suicide. And pretty much all of them, except for happy, happy, happy,
Mhm.
um, you're at some level of risk. But
Mhm.
I think when we look at the simple things, we can ask the right questions and figure out who is most susceptible, most at risk, and focus our energy on that. And you do address stuff that goes back to their childhood,
Mm.
because that does affect them. And I'm sure in Tony's case, I'm sure your dad was a combat veteran, um, and he dealt with some stuff at home, and you dealt with that stuff by way of being his son. And then you went on and did your own combat service. And that's the challenge we face today.
Mm.
It's this is multi-generational warfare
Yeah.
we've been involved with. A very close friend of mine that served 2 overseas tours, one in Iraq and Afghanistan with me. His son is now a Green Beret sergeant,
Mm.
and he's already gone on 3 deployments. And I can tell you, and my friend Dan would vouch for the fact that it's a hell of a lot harder being on this side of the ocean than that side of the ocean. I
Mm.
know what I'm doing over there, and
Mm.
I'm prepared for everything that goes on there. I might have to deal with stuff when I get back, but while I'm there, I'm in my element. But back here, worrying about somebody over there, I
Mm.
wouldn't trade places with what my wife had to deal with during those deployments
Wow.
for anything.
Wow. Yeah. Really, really, really powerful. And again, just appreciate you sharing those stories too. I mean, I'm sure as people hearing this, just be really able to soak in that piece of it too. And it's just even the way that you ended that past story too. Because I don't think people outside, civilians maybe, and I'll put myself in that category, might not always think about it that way, as both sides of that. So again, I think that's really, really healthy. Mr. Williams, anything you want to react to?
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out. You mentioned special forces, and I have a friend of mine down in Tampa. His name is Damon Friedman, and he's the SOF missions CEO. And SOF stands for Shield of Faith, but he's a special operator. And so a lot of things that General Hammond's talking about, I'm sure that he can relate to it. The whole special operations is a whole different kind of element that you have to deal with when it comes to mental health. And if, I wanted one thing I wanted to get away with from this program is that as the things that deal with the military and veteran space is so confusing and things get conflated, right? There's, even with the military, you have the active duty military, then you have the Reserves National Guard. Then you have the military versus the veteran. The average age of a military service member is 28.5. The average age of a veteran is 65.8. And I just read an article from the Defense Health Agency where 70% of the suicides stem from interpersonal relationships. And I'm saying this because we are human, and a lot of people need to understand that we're humans. We're not like the Darth Vaders and RoboCops were from Star Wars, or whatever. We're human beings, and eventually something sacrificed. To be good at this often means you're not good at something else. So you can be a great husband, but something else may fall, or vice versa. You can be a great linebacker, but suck as a husband or as a father or a spouse, whatever. So what I try to do, and General Hammond is right away. What Veterans Council veteran brings right to the table is the trust factor. And I don't care if you're African American, female, male, like that. That trust is there. I will trust a veteran before I just trust somebody look like me. I can tell you right now, the trust is there. It's hardwired. I know hardwired's right. That's what I look at. It's hardwired. And I immediately trust them, and that's part of the. It's like we're in the military and we're going on a hike, whatever. I trusted that guy in the front know where the heck he's going, right? Or I trust that the flight guy on when I do my jump master. I'm trusting that he knows what he's talking about when he says go. I'm just going. I'm not gonna say, are you sure? Because we're taught that the trust is something you can't it's very difficult to overcome. And when we get out of the military, and again, we don't do a good job of decoupling the collectiveness back to the individual. That's what we don't do, right? We don't sit there and the energy we took to make you a collective, we don't use the same energy of making you the individual. And that's how the VA sees you. The military sees you as a collective individual. The VA sees you as an individual. And that's one of the transition pieces that you miss when, you look at the new report came out from the suicide for the military, and I looked at both of them. I look at the veteran suicide report and I look at the military suicide report, and they're different. The military, because it's so collective, they talk about each branch when it comes to suicide. They talked about the family, because in the military, when you're in the military, active duty wise, they take care of everybody, including your pet, right? They're called dependents, everybody. But when you leave the military, you go into the VA, they only take care of the veteran. I always use the analogy, if I had a car accident, the veteran had a car accident, the VA would come with its DA van, and it would go and it would take the veteran out and put him in the gurney and put him into the ambulance, but they leave the family there. That's how they are organized, and they're more focused on the veteran. But we understand, and this is what General Hammond is talking about, how important the family really is to the piece. And that's the program. And all of our programs, we call them the forgotten tribes. Military veterans, family, and mental wellness is one of them. Elderly veterans, and MST survivors and families. All three of them are connected to the family. And if you don't take care of the family, you don't take care of the veteran. Veterans Council Veterans slogan, strengthen the family, you strengthen the veteran. So all of those things are something you must consider when you're talking about preventing suicide, right? Is you got to also understand that there are other factors that may make my dying by suicide, and we got to address all of them. And again, we do that. We're in the military, we do that. We have military one source, all that kind of stuff. When we get out of the military, we don't. It's probably, but I know General Hammond's program, home base, they do. And of course, in Veterans Council, we completely embrace it. We have everybody that, I'm married and stuff like that, that we make sure we also say, how's your wife? I mean, actually, how are you doing? But how's your wife doing? You know what? You don't ask them, because you guess what they're going to say? She's doing fine. You got to ask the wife. Or the husband. What's really going on? So I'm bringing some factors in, but what I really want to take away from the audience, though, is, we are human beings. And the challenges we have are that you know, they're internalized until we get out or whatever, until we start
Mhm.
defense mechanisms, and to look at trying to solve that problem, you got to look at it. And I think what General Hammond said about home base, you got to look at it in a holistic fashion.
Yeah.
Right? We're just not, like I said, when I saw that Chief Warrant Officer 5, I not even look at him, I look at his wife too, or
Mm.
and I look at his wife that's next to him.
Yeah.
I keep
And I think that's so
emphasizing the family
important.
just as important.
Yeah, that both of your programs have been really intentional about that piece too.
Yes, yes.
One other piece that you both touched on a little bit is also just working within systems, military system, government system, within the infrastructure. I know this is a larger conversation, so we might not be able to cover it all here, but would like you all to also give our listeners a sense for how you actually try and navigate as well. Because some of this seems like there are infrastructural things that could help, but it also takes a time, money, effort to actually build that. And there are also some things in place in the systems that you're actively trying to change and shift. So again, I've made that very open-ended, probably not the most well-formulated question, but anything that either of you want to touch on in terms of that piece.
Well, I would tell you, one of the things we've done, and I think we're uniquely positioned because we were the first private sector group.
Mm.
And our two parent organizations were the Boston Red Sox and the Mass General
Mm.
Hospital, which is Harvard's principal teaching school. To use a bad baseball metaphor, we started out on third base. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We had the bully pulpit of a multi-World Series winning team. And by the way, a lot of people don't know it. The Red Sox are the most philanthropic sports franchise in any sport in
Oh,
America,
wow.
actually in the world.
Wow.
You know, they've helped raise more than $30 million for
Mm.
what we do. I'm sorry, 45 million now. And they've helped raise that money, and and it's the power of that, and it's an entertainment business. It's a sports franchise, but it has a big following.
Mm.
And then Mass General, and now we're part of the bigger Mass General Brigham system, which is a 90,000 person system with 465 departments that we can draw upon for anything we need.
Mm.
And so we really are a powerhouse when it comes to this, right?
Mm.
And so we've treated more than 50,000 folks from all 50 states, and we've flown U.S. veterans in from 14 countries, all at no cost.
Mm.
And to do that, what we've done is we've reimagined what's possible. We've looked at what traditional mental health was doing, and then we looked at how could we change this? How could we flip the diagram? And when I first got to home base, it was a small outpatient clinic that saw about 200 people a year. We had an operating budget of about $3 million. It was nested within Harvard, so it was the best outpatient care you're going to get anywhere. But it had a limiting factor of treating people in Greater Boston, Eastern Massachusetts, and folks from some of the local areas from New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Maine would drive down. But how far would you travel for a 1 hour appointment once a week for 15 weeks was the limiting factor, right? So I challenged the team, and we put together our 2-week intensive clinical program that is a suicide prevention PTSD program. And we were able to compress 2 years of therapy into 14 days. And a lot of folks wonder, how is that even possible? And I would tell you, if you think about physical therapy, where you go get your shoulder work done, you go see a physical therapist once a week for an hour, they crank your shoulder, you go home, they give you homework, you come back next week, you lie about doing all the homework, they work on it some more, and over 12 to 15 weeks, you get better. In traditional therapy, as Tony well knows, once a week for an hour, you get homework, you come back next week, you lie about doing all the homework. And if you do, and that's a big caveat, if you do all 15 to 20 appointments, you're going to get a lot better. Most people drop out after 3 or 4 visits because they start feeling better and they're talking about stuff they don't want to do. It's hard to make time to get there every week. They might have to take work off. So what we did was we compressed this down into 14 days. And imagine if you had a bad shoulder and you could go to Gillette Stadium where the Patriots play, and you got a hotel room, and you work with the sports medicine team from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. doing everything from massage therapy, acupuncture, stretching, physical therapy, cryogenic therapy, 8 hours a day for 2 weeks. Would you get better faster than once a week for an hour? So our challenge was figuring out what do we
Yeah.
put in those 8 hours a day for 2 weeks.
Mm.
And we worked with partners, and these are part of our strategic partnerships. We work with medical leaders from UCLA, Emory University in Atlanta,
Mm.
and Rush Medical School in Chicago. And they built out this 2-week program at the same time as us.
Mm.
And we've now been doing this for 11 years at 4 academic medical centers
Mhm.
with rigid data outcome measures collected. And the results at all 4 sites are identical.
Mm.
We get a 60% reduction of symptoms. We see the most injured folks because you have to be pretty injured to fly in a plane across the country to go to a 2-week mental health program
Mm.
and leave your family for 2 weeks, right? We take down the barriers because there's no cost. All they have to do is get on the plane. We cover the airfare, the hotel, all their meals, all their travel, and all their care, because they paid for it through their service, in
Yeah.
our opinion. And at the end of the 2 weeks, we see a transformation. On day 1, it's hoodies up, eyes down, nobody talking. Day 14, when they graduate, it is laughing, joking, grab-assery.
Mm.
And they go through it as a team. 12 folks go through it together, and they build a peer support team that will carry on for decades
Mm.
because they went through this experience together. They're their new battle buddies.
Yeah.
And if I'm having a bad day, I can text my battle buddies, and I don't have to tell them the whole story. I just tell them I'm not having a good day. They will get hit with from their battle buddies. Hey, how you doing? I know that thing's coming up. I know it's the anniversary of this bad thing. How you doing? I'm here for you. Hey, maybe I'll come up and see you. You know what I mean? And so that was part of that enduring success.
Yeah.
We think that number one had really was a game changer, and it led to a bunch of other stuff. We now have regional programs where we do outpatient programs from mental health, TBI, depression, all these things, for about 1,500 folks a year in the greater Boston area. Our national program reaches literally anywhere in the world. We will fly you in at no cost. And in that, we've included strategic partnerships where we've identified communities that have asked us to help them build this out. And they're willing, and so they need to have a high veteran concentration. They've got to have a hospital or a university that wants to participate with us. And then they've got to have a community of support that will help raise the money because we're philanthropically based. And what we raise in Florida stays in Florida. What we raise in Massachusetts supports the Massachusetts program. And when we do that, we'll work with the local hospital system to train and certify their professionals in trauma-based therapy. We'll bring them up to Boston, train and certify them, and then we'll buy portions of their salary to treat veterans at no cost. And so we work with Tampa General Hospital, where Tony is. We have a program in Naples, Florida. We have another program in Fort Myers. We have another one in Pensacola. We just opened a program in Houston in partnership with Menninger Clinic. And we also have a program in Phoenix, Arizona. And so on the national side, we have these wonderful programs that are cutting edge. And as we build out a program in Boston, we share that same knowledge with our partners everywhere across the country. And this has actually grown into international programs where we will now, we're launching Home Base Australia this year. We've had a team from Australia spend the week with us. And we're going to basically act as consultants to help them build a similar program there. We've been working with Ukraine now for a year. We sent a team to Ukraine to embed with them. They send a team back here. We're launching another team this year, and we'll be opening programs with them this year. We've worked with the Israelis, the British, the Canadians, and a few others. But all, to share what we're doing because, we all bled together overseas and we need to heal together when we come home. And we're willing to do that with everybody we work with.
Yeah. Wonderful to hear. I mean, so many important pieces there, but I also see a through line of community in everything you just said. The local communities, wherever it is around the world, international communities, and even the fact that they're graduating together and building that new community, but then also being strategic and intentional as well. So it's really, really encouraging to hear.
You mentioned, and we need like probably 5 hours when we start talking about systems, because one of the challenges about the veterans and military is that there's so much confusion that they'll misinterpret one system for another system. I had mentioned already, just from the military aspect, what's going on with the military, and then when we go in the military, again, we have a difference between reserves and National Guard. And we got different between combat and non-combat. We got different between Navy, Air. It's so many different things, the systems within the system. And I love the contrast in here because this just reaffirms that this is my God assignment because I'm not that big, but I have a big voice. God has just sit there and said, and he needs affirmation because I told him a long time ago, I'm gonna work on burning bushes, right? I want to work on burning bushes, not no dang small little sayings. And we're talking about the assignment, and the first person that started the assignment is when I got out of the military, and I met my wife, who was a police officer playing from New Jersey, and she's the one that got me in the trajectory of mental health because she was on the domestic violence. And I wanted to have something. Everything I go through is always through military. So whenever I go through me, it always comes out military. It spits out military. So I had to have a master's degree in counseling to have any kind of shade within that the arena she was in. That's like a trajectory of mental health. And I was the first of Troy to actually get an internship at the VA, and that helped me understand more.
Okay.
Why is that important? Because the systems are what's that the complexity you mentioned. Each system is different. The military active duty is different than the military reserves and National Guard. That's a whole different system. You don't have the same access to resources that if you're reserve and National Guard. Then if you're retired from military versus not being retired, when you're retired, you have access to TRICARE, right? And when you're in the military, anybody that's part of your family is a dependent, they get the access to the service as well. That doesn't happen when you're a veteran, right? Not everybody in your family gets access to gets access to TRICARE or the VA, right? The Veteran Administration. Another system, right? Another system within a system. So first, and you say, what's the difference? Which is so important. Like the difference between General Hammond's organization and mine. My operating budget is like $55,000. But I have a loud voice. What has God done to make sure I have a loud voice? He had somebody put me in for the Florida Veterans Hall of Fame. I'm a Florida Veterans Hall of Famer. I was also acknowledged by Florida Veterans Foundation. I was just 2 weeks ago, I was not acknowledged by the mayor of Tampa, one of the honorees for the mayor of Tampa. And this Saturday, I'm going to be honored by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Why? Not because it's about me. It's my assignment, and God's saying, do your job. I provide the shovel, but you do the digging, right? That's important that I understand that. It's not about my ego. It's about me doing the job. So, and now I'm on the thing. I'm here with General Hammond, Jack Hammond. What the heck's the point? You can't analyze. You can't make that happen unless there's a God involvement. So I'm here one of the most successful programs. Him and I are talking, and I'm like, wow. Now I know. I'll use his name like whatever when I talk. I know me and Jack are buds. Like whenever I go down to Tampa until they find out. Those actually don't listen to him. But I'm just saying to you, all of this is what I call affirmations of your assignment. Okay, you can't strategize this. This is a God thing. So by me listening to what General Hammond's talking about, how much of an effect they have and some of that, and how they're really making an impact and on that as well. Now I look at myself. I said, well, I'm having an impact too, but not to that magnitude. Because it's not my. It's an assignment, not a calling. It's an assignment, not a calling. I say that because every one of those things you talked about have systems, and that's part of the problem. When we do the transitioning, the VA models itself off of the veteran. The military models itself off of young people, like the average age of 28.5, and not the elderly one who's 65, right? They got a whole new set, and people not talking about it's not happening. That data's not there. Nobody's doing studies. How many veterans in Vietnam got TBI? How many veterans in Vietnam got dementia? How many veterans, blah, 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 blah. No one's doing the collecting of data, but they're also here too. That's my assignment. Is to sit there and now create a supportive network in Florida, which I'm doing right now. Through God, couldn't do it by myself. But also keep. Last 2 weeks ago, I was in Tampa at the Tallahassee. I was up there for a military veterans gathering. With very select people can be there. God thanks, so I was there, and I talked to the legislators saying, "What are you doing for the elderly veterans and their families?" They would, if I was not there, they would not have heard that. But that was my assignment. Okay, so I say that all to say I'm here and I'm appreciative of hearing Jack talk about, I say Jack, General Hammond talk about all the things he's been doing since 2012, a long time. He's been doing this as CEO. And I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I'm here for a reason. I'm talking to you. I'm on this. And I thought when I was going to connect it, I thought really, but that changed. But anyway, I'm just saying what's really important is the systems and understanding the systems. And you really almost need a God influence to change the system, because the systems are there for a reason. There are people out on the other side that don't want the system to change. You got to fight them too, right? And so, but as long as I play my role, that's all I need to do. If my role is to sit there and echo about the forgotten tribe, what are we doing for elderly veterans? What are we doing for the families of military and veterans? And what are we doing for military sexual trauma survivors? I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
I'm doing my assignment. But the process is, like I said, if I would sit there and it's not the time, then maybe some other, if that's my assignment later on. But the systems are part of the problem, and a lot of the systems don't work together. The VA is trying to get the electronic health records together, right? And he's trying to make that so that all the VAs and stuff systems work together. Okay, so again, some of the systems don't work together. They kind of work like this. And finally, lastly, is the challenge of having a for-profit mentality versus a non-profit mentality. A for-profit mentality, you're always talking about market share. I want market share, and that's the difference between TRICARE and then the VA, because the VA, they built their model off of the people in the community are the ones that actually who you go to. So it's not about market share; it's about the community.
Yeah,
that's what TRICARE is about. The TRICARE is the community. I just sit there, whoever's the network, I go to them. I don't have to go specifically. I'm not trying to put downside the VA, but I don't have to go to the VA to get my services. I can go to anything that's close to me. Versus, again, the system. Yeah. Right? Well, if you're a veteran, guess what? There's only one VA. That's where you got to go.
Yeah.
That's where you got to go to. That's a long talk, but I wanted to make sure I get that out.
Well said.
I'm acknowledging God, having me talking with Jack, General Hammond right here, and being on your show. It's a God assignment. I'm so glad I'm part of this. But at the end of the day, when it comes to God assignment, what are you gonna do now, Tony? Start to digging. You turn this thing off, start digging.
Well, I appreciate all the work that you're doing and continue to do. Well, this has become another phrase on this podcast. It's always so much more to talk about.
Yes,
I mean, so many layers. But before we wrap up, I just want to thank both of you for everything that you shared. And also just give you an opportunity to share what gives you hope in this work, and also to share any specific resources that you think will be particularly helpful for our listeners. So, Mr. Williams, let me have you jump in with that.
Oh my gosh, I'm appreciative, of being on the show. As Mr. Andy knows about as a retired, a guy in the military now who knows about your show. He's a psychologist in the military. So you have an audience that I didn't know until now. It's just the way it works. I mean, still at some point you get spoiled about these affirmations. But I do want to, like I said, I have 3 major programs that are called Taking Care of a Forgotten Tribe. And that's the military sexual trauma survivor and the family. Always the family's part of it, because why military sexual trauma? Because the women veterans have twice the rate of suicide than non-women veterans. And the main reason why is military sexual trauma. They're forgotten. We don't hear much about it. Just I asked the VA what kind of national, but we got to take care of them. And that's one of the programs. Elderly veterans, guess whose rate is continuing to increase from 55 to 75 are the elderly veterans. And the reason why they choose suicide is totally different than the 20-year-old, the 25-year-old. So when you do your counseling, you cannot use the same model of a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, somebody who's 75, 80, 89. So those are important aspects. And then finally, the military veterans and the family, because they're on the front lines. They're the ones that will experience the PTSD or whatever's going on. General Hammond was talking about the constant, and I experienced too as a kid and as an adult, the not being there and how that affects your social development. And if you don't, and I say this out loud, we as Americans, we owe that family access to mental health, because if not, it becomes generational. And it was generational that was caused by the military service. So we cannot shirk ourselves on that duty. If it is a service-connected mental health disorder, we owe the family just as much access as the veteran, because We caused it. And if we don't take care of it, it becomes generational. So those few things, I'm talking, we as Veterans Council Veterans, we have programs for that. And so if you get a chance on a website or whatever, and again, I'm not here to take care of the world. So there's more. Anybody else want to do the same thing? I'm happy. Here's some more. I'm not trying to monopolize this. I'm not trying to franchise this. And I'm not trying to nationalize this. I'm just doing my part, being obedient and sharing it. So that's what I want to leave with this show.
Really well said. So well said. Thanks for bringing so many of those important pieces to the forefront as well.
Cool.
General Hammond?
First, I just want to share with Tony, and for your listeners, we know now, having lost 150,000 veterans to suicide since 2001, that 80% of them have no connection to the VA whatsoever for a range of reasons. So if we lose 20 a day, 16 have no connection to the VA. And that's a conversation I've had with the VA secretary, and he acknowledges that fact. The challenge is the VA keeps focusing on what they can do within their silo. Because of that gap, and as you can imagine, if 80% of the folks aren't going to be helped and they could die, they're at risk because they don't have access to the VA. You need a better mousetrap. You need more support. You need a bigger house. And so there are thousands of veteran service organizations across the country trying to help fill the gap and address that big gap. And so we measure success one person at a time. If we can save a life, if just one life every day, that's all we care about. If Tony can save another one, and these other veteran groups can all save it collectively, we're saving lives. And we're getting after that 80% that will never go to a VA. So that's a huge thing. From my perspective, what we look at, but I'd like to share with any veterans listening to the program, you just got to work on getting a little bit better, one day better every single day. And I learned that from some of our docs that work in brain injury care. You're not getting better immediately on something significant like that. You got to focus just on getting one day better every day. And if you need more care than connectivity, connecting with other veterans, if you need more care, we have wellness-based programs. If those aren't enough to help you cross over and get to a good place, and you need that clinical care, Home Base runs 41 of these 41 groups of 12 a year for that 2-week intensive clinical program. All you have to do is go to homebase.org and click a button that says Connect to Care. And somebody will follow up with you and will get you into the cycle and get you up there. And it will cost you nothing from there on out, other than, sending your records in when we tell you to, and then getting on the plane when it's your turn to come in. And we segment these 41 cohort groups based on evolution and seeing more defined needs. And so we now have 13 for special operations team members, because after 2012, conventional forces really stopped deploying in big numbers, and then we overused the operators. So I had 3 deployments. These operators have 15, 20, 25 combat deployments, which is unheard of.
Wow.
And so, of course, we need to give them, we need to push them more time, because they've been carrying the burden since 2012 with one small community, the smallest element of the entire military. So we have 13 of those. We have 3 for families of the fallen. We work with a national organization called TAPS, which is Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. It's the umbrella group for the families of our fallen. They have a subset of surviving spouses and parents of military suicide. And all too often, they witnessed the suicide at the kitchen table. They walked in and found the remains in their own home, and they are devastated. They are the most injured people we care for. There is no other program in the United States that cares for them directly. And so we run that 3 times a year in partnership with this other group. We run 3 Spanish-speaking cohorts, because we have a number of veterans that are from Puerto Rico and other Spanish-speaking environments. And when they went home, they all speak English. It's just they slip back into Spanish as their routine language. And coming to a clinical program, we don't want them to get lost on language challenges. So we have translators to help support them there. We found an unmet need working with Native Americans as we went into Arizona and Navajo Nation, and we found out that Navajo Nation is the size of New England, but has 3 community hospitals to care for everybody, and you often have to drive 5 hours to get to a mediocre clinic. 4 out of 10 homes don't have running water or electricity. 40% of the people don't have running water or electricity. So telehealth isn't a possibility in this geographically dispersed area. So we run 3 programs a year for our Native Americans, one of which we deploy a team to tribal lands and run it in a clinic on tribal lands. And so there's a lot of ways to get after that, whether you're big or small, in the veteran service space. But we guarantee we measure it as saving 1 life at a time, focusing on 1 person at a time. The big numbers are great because we have a lot of resources that we're able to throw at it. But the key is focusing on 1 person at a time, 1 family at a time, and building that out and helping veterans, reclaim their life and just get 1 day better every day, and so that they can reimagine their future and have the life that they so much deserved and earned.
Yeah, definitely. Well, really well said as well. I'm grateful to both of you. I mean, this has been very moving in a lot of ways to just hear about the investment that you all are making in each and every life, 1 life at a time. So I also appreciate, as I'm hearing you all talk, I'm thinking about how many things you all are doing too. And just the fact that you took time out to join on this podcast, really trying to amplify this message, hopefully to an audience that can really benefit from it as well. So I'm grateful for you all joining, grateful for the work that you all do, and grateful for you all as listeners who have really stuck with us in this conversation. I hope you get a lot out of this and definitely share it widely with all these important resources that both our guests have shared. Mr. Williams, General Hammond, thank you again for joining the Addy Hour podcast.
Thank you both.
Go Army.